know. So as I mentioned to you this morning, I was going to share with you a presentation on the effort that's going to come up in 2020. It's hard to believe that it's already here. I mean, it goes by so fast, and generally by the first part of 2019, Jim Corner, who Laura and I go with, he's starting to pester us and say, I need to have all your work into me by September 1 or September 15th so I can get it all translated into French and so forth. So we started working pretty early, Laura and I do, getting our lessons ready for this very effort itself. Over in Acts, the 13th chapter, you see the beginning of the first missionary journey. And so Paul, on his first part of his journey, he goes up into the lower part of Asia Minor, if you will. He goes to Pisidia. He'll end up going to Lycaonia, Lystra, Derbe, and other places like that. At the second part of the missionary journey, he says to Barnabas, listen, he goes, we need to go back to these people that we have shared the gospel with. In verse 21 of chapter 14, it says, and after they had preached the gospel to the city and had made many disciples, they returned to Lystra and Iconium and Antioch, strengthening the souls of the disciples, encouraging them to continue in the faith, and saying that through many tribulations we must enter the kingdom of God. And then as you get over to the 15th chapter, they're going to go into the second missionary journey. And in the second missionary journey, his purpose behind doing so was this. And after some days, Paul said to Barnabas, let us return and visit the brethren in every city in which we proclaim the word of the Lord and see how they are. So the purposes of Paul's missionary journey obviously were to bring people into the Lord, but not just to bring them into the Lord and leave them there, but the purpose was to bring them and then to keep them. So he returns back with Barnabas and he begins to strengthen them and encourage them and say to them that, listen, it's not going to be easy being a Christian. You'll enter the kingdom through a lot of tribulations, but you need to stay faithful and you need to stay strong. And then he moves on from there. Then he says, let's go back on the second missionary journey and let's see how they're doing. Let's check up on them. Well, that's kind of what we did. The church, of course, when you talk about the Cameroon effort itself, that thing has been going over since 1954. So we're not new there, except for a period of time after the beginning of, or the starting of the church there in Cameroon. There came a period of time where that ceased to exist almost. And so Jim Corner in 1998, actually I think in 1997 when I went over to Ghana, West Africa, Jim, while we were there and I went home, he went on over to Cameroon and checked the place out along with Jerry Reynolds, which is a guy who'd been going to Ghana like forever. Up to that point, from 86 to 98, Jim and I had been going to Ghana, West Africa, and we went there for the purposes of evangelizing. We just went and evangelized villages and taught people by the hundreds and baptized them in like fashion. Then we decided to maybe go on a different tack, and we began going into Cameroon to strengthen the church that is there. And they have told us since our coming in there beginning in 1998 that we're one of the better works and one of the better ways to lift up the church and strengthen it through our through our efforts. And so I think this will be my 10th trip, or maybe the 11th trip, since I have been working with this congregation here at Linder Road, and you've all been always so generous in helping us to do that. So the purpose of the trip itself is to encourage the church through education and instruction. In Cameroon, there are 210 churches ranging from 5 members to 225 members. They don't have any elders there. And so the vast majority of them are itinerant preachers. They have approximately 16 men who receive some kind of financial support from the Americans. I think there's one congregation in the Kumbatown area that fully supports itself. It supported itself for a long time with American money, but their preacher eventually weaned himself off of that support. His congregation started supporting him more, and he kind of got really inventive and used his imagination, and so he bought pigs and raised pigs to sell them. He bought different kinds of plants and raised them and sold them, so he augments his preaching with some farming and working with pigs and things of that nature. But the rest are itinerant preachers, so they have no formal training whatsoever. They're just men who love God and love the church, and so they do what they can to serve the congregation. Many of the congregations, they don't have adequate supply of songbooks. Some Christians don't have Bibles. The membership is diverse, from the very smallest, wee children all the way up through teenagers, all the way up to elderly people there. All ages in between make up the church that is there, but from Jim going over there, probably 3 times more than I have, he says probably the future lies in the young generation who is going to come up, and they'll have a different vision for how they can carry out the mission in the church in Cameroon. Now, of course, we have PowerPoint songs, and we have songbooks in the back of our pews, and we have songbooks in our library, and almost every congregation in the Brotherhood in the United States has multiple songbooks. That's not true over in Cameroon. They don't have books like that. They don't leave them at the church building a lot of times because thieves will break in and steal the songbooks from them and so forth. So a lot of people have their songbooks, and they bring them sometimes with it on their head, and they walk into the church building, and songbooks are there, and they sing and so forth. There are some who have been trained in preacher schools. They've been up at Paul Key's school that's up in the north. Some of them have been over to Nigeria to a preaching school that is there. Maybe a scant few have went over to Ghana, or Kumasi Bible College, and have been trained over there. But the vast majority of them that have been educated, even when they get into a congregation, find it very difficult to find support. And so oftentimes they end up leaving the ministry in order to feed and take care of their families, and they go back to their farms, or they go back to some other kind of secular occupation in order to take care of things. And so a lot of the men that have been educated to preach can't do so simply because they just don't have the funds to make it happen. So the majority of the congregations in Cameroon are spiritually weak. When spiritual weakness is combined with the poverty levels that they have, it doesn't allow preachers to be supported. There was a time when I first started going to, say, Cameroon in 1998, I would try to find support for various men to be fully supported. Louis Basai was one of the first ones that I chose to try to find support for, and Loveland supported him pretty heavily. Andrew Maliki was another one, and so I found different guys to do that with the idea that they would, that we would support them for 5 years, and then for the next 5 years there'd be a drawdown, a 10% drawdown, and that the congregation was expected to pick up that 10% until eventually we would be free from that. But the congregations were never able to do that because they make very little money, and so it's very difficult for them to support a preacher without harming their families. So it prohibits the growth of the gospel. That's why sometimes congregation will have mutual edification, which means they'll have just a lot of different men preach the gospel, but sometimes there's not a whole lot of cohesiveness there, and the result of that is congregations don't move forward. Studies have shown that when there's a located man that has been there for more than 5 years, congregations will show an upward tick and can grow. And so you can imagine, without having a located man and someone who puts full-time work into the church, how maybe that church cannot grow as well, or congregation can't grow as well. So the goal of our mission work is to further establish and build strong and self-sustaining congregation across the country, and we do so through our leadership training seminars, where we go over and we take what expertise we have, what education we have, and we share it with those itinerant preachers. And Lori goes over and she trains the women. Up until probably 2002, they didn't have ladies' Bible classes. They didn't have children's Bible classes. They were just teaching from the pulpit and teaching in classes, but there were none of those other things. And we started bringing a woman over there with us. And now today there are children's classes and women's classes and things like that because of the work that goes on there. But the ultimate goal of the ministry is just to help develop strong congregations that fully are capable of working on supporting their own. That goal is not going to be quickly realized because they're a third world country. And so it's going to take time for them to build up the numbers to sustain a man to that degree. If you were to think about what is the passage that we would fit to this, it would be 2 Timothy 2 and verse 2, where you entrust to faithful men the things which Paul had taught Timothy, and then you just continue to push that down the line and continue to teach people and educate people. And so intensive training is conducted over a 5-day period by visiting Americans. There's one that we used to do on the French side and one on the English side, but because of some of the difficulties that I'll share with you in a few moments that are going on over in Cameroon, we're now taking those 2 seminars and we are paying the passage or the transportation for those on the English side, which are much more heavily numbered, and bring them over to the French side where it's safe. And so we're doing double seminars. We'll do an English seminar in Douala, and then we'll do a French seminar in Douala at the congregation Cité de la Paix is where we will be doing that. The men are provided training for sermon preparation, class preparation, overall studies of how to study the Bible. That's what I'm going to teach them this year, is I'm going to teach them how do you study the Bible without notes. If you were to go into my library, then you would see a fairly large library, and you'll see, in fact, some of my library is in the library in here because I don't have room in my office, but you'll find lots of commentaries, and you'll find several encyclopedia collections, you'll find dictionaries, you'll find word studies, you'll find all kinds of incredible material that I have at my disposal. They don't have that. So they have to be taught how to use just their Bibles, how to break down their Bibles just by looking at it. And so I teach them how to go about doing that so that they can study like that. The women are trained in areas such as evangelism, the roles of wives, mothers, how to teach children, Bible classes, and a whole lot more. Like I said, there's no elders or deacons there, and so in many ways, we're trying to nurture people who are very young in their faith, though they've been in the church maybe for a good while. So we're trying to strengthen them up. The value of seminars. This is what they wrote. We usually do a survey of those that we have taught, and we ask them, write down some things that you think about the seminar. And some of the things that they say are, I pray that God gives you the grace to continue coming with such rich lessons. It will enable us to impact the lives of others and boost our faith. Growth is a continual and gradual process, but the seminar is helping that mission. The seminar is useful because those who attend are being enlightened and ignorance is being shifted to the corner. The material is well and carefully designed, and the leaders can easily teach it to our members. The seminar is successful because it helps to open our brains to the Word of God. So when was the last time you had your brains opened? I've seen that the seminars have done a lot to not only teach our children, but ourselves. The next generation will not know you, but they will know you through the mark that you have left behind. Sister Louise, when Lori doesn't go with me, then Louise goes. You are a blessing in my life. You have given me what I could not buy from the market, and it is the knowledge. And I will ask God for wisdom. God bless you. In past seminars, as I mentioned to you, we usually go to the English side and to the French side, but because of the fact that they're in kind of a civil war over there right now, they were in it the last time I was there, which was 2 years ago, but it was just kind of getting the ball rolling then, and now it's moving fairly quickly there. And so on the English side is wanting to secede from the Cameroonian government. And Cameroon's not going to allow them to do that. The president of the country will not allow them to do that. And the reason is because the English side is very rich. It's rich in terms of plantations. It's rich in terms of gold. Lots of other, it's a very rich country in terms of natural materials. And so they're never going to allow that to happen, but they want to do that. The result of that is that the government holds back certain things from them in order to bring them into submission. So for instance, like if Angela was to go to school to become a teacher and they put you through school, then they station you where they want you to station. They'll say, Angela, you're going to go over to Boya, and that's where you're going to teach. And you might go over there and you might teach 5 years and never receive a paycheck. And they would be saying to you, the money is coming. The money is coming. Well, if you go 5 years and the money hasn't come, then you're going to start to get a little bit upset. And so you might even protest. And if you protest, now you're protesting the government. And the government's going to react because of that. And so that's kind of some of the things that are behind this. There's a lot more than that I don't really understand. But the result of that is that we can't, at this point in time, we can't go over to the English side. It's way too dangerous over there. They are, if there's a dissident that is found in a village that, say, has attacked an army company or a squad or something like that at a checkpoint, and they find out that person lives in X village, then they'll go into that village and they'll punish that village, which means they might burn the village. And so many of our brethren over there are living in such villages, and many of them have had to flee for their lives and live out in the bush or in the jungle in order to not be killed. You say, okay, well, you don't really know that for sure. No, I know that for sure because Lori and I on Facebook have received pictures from some of the preachers there who've sent us pictures of villages shot up and some of our brethren who are lying dead on the ground. And so it's the real deal. I've had to tell them no more pictures, and I know it's happening. I can read the news and so forth. So as a result, we're not going to the English side, we're going to the French side, and we're perfectly safe over there. No problem whatsoever in Douala. No problem there. So there's a tremendous, I guess I'm telling you is that the hardship that it's one thing to be in poverty, it's another thing. It's hard being a Christian, but it's even harder when there's that kind of thing happening in your country. And the result of that is that many of our brethren have fled away from the English side over into the French side and are taking sanctuary there, and they're living with our brethren there, but many of them are living with our preachers that are there. And preachers are expected to take care of them. And so there are some preachers over there that I know personally who have 15, 20 plus people living in their house. One brother named Nicholas, he said, please, Richard, is there any way you could send me some money or money? I have 15 people living in my house. I don't have mattresses for them to lay on or to sleep on. Is there any, and some things like that. So there's a tremendous hardship that are there on the members of the body. The preachers are having a lot of huge problems in terms of housing the members. Ma Dai's orphanage is surviving, obviously, but it still is always in need of a lot of help because this affects them as well. And of course, you can't travel over there like you once could because of the danger. When I go over there, I go through probably, would you say, Lori, 3 to 5 checkpoints on the way? You go through with checkpoints, and used to, you just, as an American, you just pull up to the checkpoint, they look at your passport and send you through. Now they make you come down out of the van or the bus. You come down out of the van, they make you then get with the rest of the Cameroonians and walk through a line, and now they check you at gunpoint. And you run that risk of possibly getting a checkpoint shot up. And so travel is very difficult these days. So we're doing everything in Douala. The mission team, of course, is Lori, myself, and Jim Corner, and that's Jean-Claude Ete. He's the kind of our guy on the ground that really takes care of us and has for many years. The seminars this year will be the Beatitudes. Lori is going to be teaching them on the Beatitudes and on courage. I'm going to be teaching them how to study the Bible. I don't even know what Jim's going to do. I haven't seen his material, but he's seen mine. And so we've had that all in, but I've heard Jim teach, and he is an incredible teacher. And so they'll get some really good stuff out of that. The picture behind me this is the church that meets the seminarians that come for the workshop in Kumba Town. And so you can see that there's a large body of people there, and that's probably about 2/3 of what really is there because the rest are inside the building, okay? And they're out different places eating and whatever. So you can see that it's a fairly large crowd of men and women who come to that seminar to be taught at Kumba. It's not going to be held there now. It's got to now be held over in Douala. So now they got to be paid passage to risk some things getting over to us in order for us to teach them for that week. The English side classes, I just did that to show that I'm really not going over there on a safari or anything like that. But you can see me teaching here, and Jim's teaching here, and Larry's teaching over here, and these are the classes. So you can see that they're super well attended. They're packed, actually. And those are the people that we are able to teach. These are village preachers. The ones on your left are what we call traveling preachers. They go from village to village preaching. Okay, and what we have done in the past, what you helped me with last time is I helped fund some of their passage, their transportation, where they will preach they'll go several different congregations on a Sunday, and they divide it up between the 4 of them, and they go out and they preach. The ones to your right, those are the preachers on the English side that attended the seminar the year I was there. And of those preachers there, I've chosen 11 of the men to help. And so generally what I have done is when I first started giving them stipends, I gave them like $50, and over the time I've kind of raised it up to, well, I did raise it up to $100. So $100 to those preachers. And if you were to look at how much they make, that is a huge bonus for them. And I don't know if I started something I shouldn't have started, but these men these men sacrifice a lot to be preachers in the Lord's kingdom. They are men who are educated. They are men who could be doing a lot of things. They could be making a lot more money farming than they do preaching. And I just appreciate them so much that I just thought maybe if I could just give them just a bump, just a little bit of encouragement. It's not going to fix anything, but it's going to give them some breathing room for their family and for their children. And so from those men there, I usually have chosen 11 of those preachers that I will stipend or give them a small gift. And when I give them that gift, I always tell them, this is not from me. This is from my congregation that sent the money with me. And so I think I've told you in the past that that's how I take some of the money you give me. I then give it to them as a gift with a note telling them where it came from. And Jim says, what are you going to do if your congregation ceases to do that? I says, then I'll put it on a credit card, but they're going to get paid their money. Something to think about. This is the French side. On the French side, this is the number of people that come to the seminar there. And so you can see that it's a pretty good sized number of people on the French side that come. That's at Cité de la Paix. There's a congregation there, and that's me teaching there. And Simone is the man that is to my left that is translating for me. These are the ladies' class that Lori taught last time she was there. And you can tell that they fill up a room at the Lawat Hotel where we stay. Down in the basement, there is a room that they rent there. All the men are always mad because the women get air-conditioned rooms, and we don't. Jim buys them Cokes. He won't buy the men Cokes, and they get candy. We don't get candy or any of that kind of stuff. And the funny thing about this is they have air conditioning, but they're always telling Lori to turn it off because it's too cold, to which she hates because she likes the air conditioner, obviously. And then, of course, there are children's classes. And so while we're there, Lori will be teaching in the children's classes as well. Of the men, these are the preachers on the French side that come to the seminar. And there you see I have circles around 7 of the men there that we stipend. And a couple of them cost a little bit more because they live in cities. So I give them a little bit more than $100. Okay, so all in all, I think there's up to 17 or 18 preachers. I started out with 4, and now I've got like 18. And so I don't know what I'm going to do if I were to ever go over there and the money didn't happen. Because they're not going to come up and ask you for it. They won't do that. They'll never ask you for it. And so I asked Jim one time, I said, what if I don't do this? What's going to happen? Because they won't say a word to you. They'll be disappointed, but they won't say a word to you. So anyway. Maudai's orphanage. This is an incredible work at Maudai's. Maudai has children from little bitty babies, this big, that have been left on doorsteps, all the way up to older boys who have become teenagers and men who still stay there and still work at the orphanage helping Maudai, because Maudai has up to almost 60 children that's under her supervision and raising them up. And you can't believe how incredibly smart they are, the songs that they teach them and things like that. Well, I was there. I think we spent something like $3,000 on my last trip there. I had it all broke down, but I didn't want to show you the numbers because it might scare you away. But we bought, you see behind me on this picture right here, this is Maudai right here, Diana here. And here are beans and rice, and there's another box somewhere around here that's full of dried fish and powdered milk and all kinds of staple items like that we purchased for them. And so you can see you can see it right here, all the food that we bought right here. And you can see the children that are there. The rest of the children are in school, and these here are the ones that are at home right now. The rest have been in school and so forth, but it's like a lot more than these here. We go there, and they sing to us, and a lot of times, sometimes I started giving X amount of dollars to Diane herself. And I think last time I gave her $100. And I said, go buy yourself a dress. You cannot spend these on your children. This is not for your children. This is for you. You have to buy yourself a dress or something like that. And I'd leave some money behind for the children, for clothes, for Bibles, for candy, that kind of thing, along with all the food that we bring as well. Sleeping arrangements. That is the kitchen right there. So that's the wood supply right there that they do the cooking with and so forth. She raises some chickens. Chickens right here. She raises chickens. She raises some pigs. So she does what she can in order to produce some meager income as well as being able to provide food for her children as well. She does receive some government assistance. So it's not like she's flying on her own. She does receive some government assistance. And I know of congregation and the brotherhood that helps out, and we have really helped out in some really good ways as well. Yes, Connie? She's asking, do any of the children ever get adopted out? Seldom. Very seldom. There's a reason why they are there. They're there oftentimes because the families can't support them any longer, so they bring them to Maadai. They have a children that's born that they can't afford to have a child, so they just come and leave the child on the doorstep, and she raises them. And some of them she's raised from little infants all the way up to adults, and so not many of them get adopted out. She raises them up, teaches them, puts them through school. And school's not free there, by the way. You got to pay to go to school there. And so, some of the money that we give goes in that direction as well. She's asking, why aren't they adopted? Because people can't afford them. They can't afford children. I was trying to think of a delicate way to say this. Not often. Not often. She's asking, are they not given that option or offered to be adopted? And the answer is yes. Do they get adopted? Probably not. Probably not. Yeah, and April said there's a blessing there because they're being raised by an incredibly strong Christian woman. Ma Diane is just an incredible, begin to tell you how incredible that woman is. These are two young men that were brought to her as babies, and now they're adults, and they've stayed on with Maadai, and they help. They have one part of the orphanage that is in an area, say a mile this way, that's for the older children, and then there is the part of the orphanage that is over a mile away over here that raises the smaller children. So she doesn't integrate them, and for some obvious reasons. And one of the things that I didn't show you a picture of, she's got even a pond there where she has brought in fish, and she's raising fish for her children through this pond. So what does the orphanage need? Well, it needs clothing, it needs Bible, it needs food. There's a stipend that we give to Dinah. So, there's those kinds of things. And so if you saw the pictures of the little ones, you can see them behind me. You can see that they're not outfitted like our children are. All their clothes are hand-me-downs, that someone has sent over from America in a box, and she has got hold of them, and so she uses them for her children. And by the way, they're happy. They're really happy little kids, so that's what they know. They don't know anything better than that, and so there's a lot of happiness in their lives. The other thing that we do is that you remember some years ago when I first got here, I think probably in the third year or fourth year I was here, remember we went and we paid we bought a building. We built a building at Smolakambe, and we built that building we gave them the money from the ground up, and it cost us, I think, $10,000 or $6,000, but they built that thing completely, and then we decided we're not going to do that anymore. And so what we tell the congregations over there is if you put the foundation and the walls and the trusses up, then we'll try to raise money for the roofs. And so you can see the corrugated tin roofs right here. These are corrugated tin. We'll pay for, this was the church that was there, and this is the church they built. Okay, so they once met in this little shack here, and then they built this building here, and our congregation, we paid for this roof right there. We paid for that roof. We paid for this roof right here. That's small. We paid for that. We paid for this roof at Bansa. We paid for that roof there. So, we probably put a dozen roofs on church buildings, probably more than that. And so we have, and you say, well, what's the big deal? Well, because you saw what the shanties look like. And if you've ever been over there in the monsoon season or when it rains, let me tell you, when it rains, I'm talking serious rain. Serious rain. and so they worship. There's a lot of congregations over there that just have mud walls with sticks going up, and then they have a thatched roof, and it's a thatched roof, made out of palm branches and things like that. And so for them to take on the challenge of making bricks, no one makes the bricks for them. They make their own bricks. They buy the sand, they buy the mixing, and they make those bricks one at a time, and they stack them for the future for when they will be able to start putting up their walls. Foundation than their walls. And so they have to do a lot of planning. They do a lot of the heavy lifting on their own. And then we just come in and we provide the money for, they call them zincs over there. Zinc roofs, the zincs, so we buy the zincs for the roofs. These are members from the church that's up in the north. My last trip, when I left there, we left behind, I think it was like $5,000 for that work there. And what they did is these group of people here, they're preacher farmers. They're itinerant preachers and they're farmers. And what they do is they go out and they buy corn at the beginning of the year. When the corn is first produced, they go out and they buy corn seed. And they buy that corn seed at a fairly reduced price, and they stockpile it away. They don't use it, they stockpile it away, and they wait for the end of the season when the corn seed becomes really rare, and then they sell it, and they sell it for like 3 times the price. And they take that money that is there, and they pay their preachers. They give money to the preachers in their area. And then what they do is they take the rest of that money that's left over after that, and they then take that money, and they go and they buy the corn seed the next year when it's at a low rate again, stockpile it, and then sell it at a premium once again. I remember Jim says, isn't there something dishonest about that? I remember John Klein goes, he says, Jim, it's business. It's business, And so that's what they're doing. I don't know how that's worked out for them. So I'm looking forward to getting over there this year and asking them, how's that working for you? Because I told them, I said, this is a one-time gift, and we're finished. So don't come back here to me again, because no more. That's it, So we invested in you. I want you to think about the traveling time. This is how valuable the seminar is for these people. They leave Roa to Douala. It's 28 hours long. From Roa to Garwa is 4 hours by bus. From Garwa to Naganderi is 4 hours by bus. From Nagangari to Yaoundé is 14 hours by train. When I'm talking about train, I'm not talking about trains like we're used to seeing. I'm talking about more like boxcars with benches in them. And that's the trains that they travel on. And then they get to Yaoundé, which is the capital, and they then go to Douala, which is a 4-hour bus ride there. And then while they're there, they walk in order to come to the seminar. So they sacrifice a lot. So there it is. North Corn business to augment preacher salaries was $4,000. North Seminars travel for GC, which is Jean-Claude, Simone, Julianne, and their wives. It was $800. And we bought a generator for them because they use that for evangelism. They go into villages, and they will show like Joe Miller film strips and lighting and so forth. And so they use the generator also for their sound system, so they can preach out with to magnify their voices and so forth. This is Simone and Nadesh, Parfait. And the reason why I took a picture of them is because you saved this man's eyesight. He got a disease in his eyes where he was losing his sight. And he had to have some money to go over to France to have a professional look at it, and so he's able to go over there, get the medicines for his eyes. They were able to save his eyes, and he's doing pretty good today. You did that for him. You saved his eyes. He could have easily, Jim said he could easily lose his eyes over this. He is an incredible young man. This is Roderick. Roderick had a heart problem, a kidney problem. He had violent headaches. Maybe that should have been violent, but I don't think so. Anyway, I gave him from you $575 to go see a specialist. And I'm told that Roderick is doing pretty good now. But he had to have someone to tell him what was going on there. At every seminar, it has not failed yet, at every seminar, someone would have died if we had not been there. That's the honest truth. They would have died. Because in Cameroon, if you get sick, if you have an appendicitis, if you have malaria, or you have some kind of disease and they take you to the hospital, they'll let you die on the doorstep if you don't have the money to pay. It's not America. It's Africa. If you don't have the money, then you stay on the doorstep. You won't enter into the hospital or enter into the clinic unless you have the money up front to pay. In almost every one of those instances, while we've been over there, there have been people, generally with malaria, there's been severe malaria, and we're able to pay for their treatment in the hospital to save their lives. And that happens so many different times. At every seminar, someone dies. At every seminar, someone dies of something, So we do a lot of really good things with money. I just showed you this picture here to show how much I suffer with the food that I eat over there. That's all canned food there, and it's all cold. None of it's warmed up. And so that's the one thing we look forward to when we go to Africa. And this is we travel around on machines on the back of motorcycles. And on this particular day, this brother here, who is a taxi driver, he drives a machine for a living. He gave Lori and I a ride, and we both rode on that thing from the meeting place to the place where we are staying, which is in the Lawat Hotel. So in the mission effort, we'll teach 90 hours of teaching in the seminar. I'll preach and teach at 3 to 4 congregations. I'll teach a Bible class, and then I'll preach. At 3 congregations, maybe 4. Lori will teach classes. The mission effort will involve the Kumba Orphanage, Bibles for preachers, clothing, food, all those things. What can you do to support missions? Support those who are willing to go on mission efforts. For instance, Guatemala, those who are going to Guatemala, that's going to be happening this year as well in August. You haven't decided yet? But there's people who want to go to Guatemala that may not be able to afford to do so. And so maybe you might be able to help out with those who you find out are wanting to go there. Lori, Buckingham Road, they pay for $2,000 of Lori's trip to buy a plane ticket. This year, the plane tickets were about $2,500 each for round-trip tickets. And so, and you're supposed to have $1,800 above your travel fare, which is probably more like $2,200 now because of inflation and so forth, in order for us to stay in the country. And so Lori is short by about $2,200 of being able to go. Well, she'll go one way or the other, but to go there so that she gets to use the bathtub every other day might be nice. She might like that. Support for full-time workers. You can help with support for men who are willing to go to the preacher training schools. There's a preacher training school in Boya now, and I think it costs like $120 a month to put a man through school and his family. It could be up a little bit from there. Bear Valley, by the way, is the sponsor of that school that's there. 18 preachers were stipend last time. I'd like to be able to do that again. Buy Bibles or Bibles for preachers and members. Preachers over there, they don't have really nice Bibles. And so what we try to do is we try to buy them study Bibles, which are generally, they're not with pigskin, they're hardbound Bibles. And they're usually like Thompson chain Bibles because there's so many helps in the back of a Thompson chain. And so we buy Thompson chain Bibles or good study Bibles. You say, well, why don't you take them over with you? Because they weigh too much. They weigh a lot, and so that costs a lot of money to bring them over there. And so it's cheaper to buy a Bible there. But buying the Bibles there are not cheap. They're not cheap Bibles. They cost a lot of money to buy a Bible. Help pay for a roof on a church building. It's nice to be able to worship under a roof without there being sun beating on you or rain. Help with Maud Dye's orphanage. There's always a need for those little children over there. Medical needs, surgery needs, those are always happening over there. And so sometimes when I have extra money, then, I designate so much to go for that thing. And those things always show up, always show up. A lot of the stuff that we do over there, beyond the teaching is eternal. It goes on with them forever. The other things are just ways that we can help them and make their lives just a little bit easier for a while. And that's what that does. 14 million souls in Cameroon. And so it's time for us to go back. And Lori and I are excited about that trip there and all that's going to go on while we're there. And so thanks for all your prayers. That's probably the most important, your encouragement and financial support. If you want to help in any of those areas there, then write a check to the Linder Church of Christ, put down on the corner of it, Cameroon Mission effort. And if you want it to be designated to a certain place, then make sure that you put a note with it so we know that you want it to go to the orphanage, you want it to go to preachers, you want it to go to Lori, you want it to go, wherever you want it to go, just designate where you want it to go. Okay, and if you don't know where you want to go, ask me and I'll tell you where it should go. And so I think that's all I got to say about that. And it's right on time, so I'll stop. And we'll offer an invitation to you. And if you need to come forward at this time for any reason and would like our prayers or even like to become a Christian tonight, now's your opportunity to do so while together we stand and sing.